Okay guys, here is a quick and dirty removing the regulator, adjusting it, putting it back in. I'm assuming you've watched Ted's video, Edgun USA, Ted's holdover, about removing the air. I've already got the air out of my gun. I've taken the screws out. Like I said, it's going to be quick and dirty. The breech is already, rear breech has already been taken off. You've got two more screws in the front, the breech block, two screws on the end cap, a screw on the hammer housing, two screws on the trigger. The housing will come off. You can set it aside, pull the air cap off, and then you're ready to slide the barrel assembly to the back. You can remove it, set it aside. You've got 6 more screws. 3 here on the air tube regulator assembly. 3 more on the front plug air gauge. Once you pull those, you can just slide the front plug out, set it aside. The rear, you're going to have to use what I use is a piece of the broom handle and a mallet. And it takes a little effort to get it moving. Drive it out, push it where you can grab it. And pull it on out. Okay. That's what we're after right there. The regulator itself, to adjust it, the back screw, and I've had this apart already. Is reverse threads. And that's just a locking screw. And this is what we're after. And okay, there we go. It was set from the factory 155 bars. You can see the little notch right here, or the little magic marker. I put that on, that's where the regulator was originally. I just put that on there just to keep track of things. I have already turned the screw in about 1/3 of a turn. I tried that. I needed to adjust the speed just a little bit more. I was at 917, I want 890, so I turned it in just a little more, and I've already done that. I just doing this just to show you guys. Well, I've got the thing apart. I'll show you the inside of the regulator. This is the internals of the regulator. This O-ring right here I wore out on my 25 caliber R2.5. Took me about 17,000 shots to wear that out. But regulators is pretty simple actually. Some coil washers, tensioners. Okay. I'll show you the air valve too while I'm at it. The 25s are a little overbuilt or overpowered, whatever. This valve here, the Durlin guide, will eventually break after 5,000 to 7,000 shots, depending on what speed you're running at and how hard, how much preload you've got on the hammer spring. But they will break eventually. $35 to get a new one from Tony. Pretty easy to get to also. There is an O-ring that sits on this. When you put it back together, just a little bit of silicone grease on it, and it sits down here. Make sure that it stays in there when you're putting the gun back together. Actually, when you slide the barrel assembly on, if that moves out of place, you're going to have a leak there. One of the modifications I like to do, and hopefully this will show up, I grind, or I actually file a little bit off this corner here. And what that does, you're cocking the rear breech assembly to cock the gun. When you pull the bolt back, this block here actually is what pushes the hammer back and cocks it. When you slide the bolt back up, this little piece has got a ball bearing with a spring behind it, and that ball bearing has to slide up and over the square edge on this plate to finally go into the hole, and that holds your handle back in. The square edge I knock off with a jeweler's file. It helps the ball bearing ease up and then finally drop into the hole. Just helps a little bit, just something I do. Another thing I've done on my R3, the stock front trigger adjusting screw doesn't have enough threads on it. Kraken actually sent this to me. It's got more threads. It's got a little hex coupling bolt on it. I don't know where he got it from, but you can adjust it with finger pressure. You can make your own like that, or just get a longer Allen screw, but you need more adjustment than what the stock screw gives you. But once you turn it in a little more, you'll get a little bit of creep, and just a little bit more pressure will fire the gun. I really like doing that mod. If you have to turn your regulator down, next thing I recommend, there's a locking screw here. You have to loosen that and turn your hammer spring tension screw out. Give it a couple turns out, because you're not going to need near as much pressure on the hammer, because the regulator's set lower and it takes less pressure to knock the air valve in. So, but you're going to have to put this on a crony, and you want to turn this out enough where you're on the front side of the regulator and when you turn this in, you'll see a speed increase. Okay, you've adjusted your regulator. When you put it back together, of course you want to, these two holes on the side of the transfer port, you want them facing up, because that's what your front breech block bolts to. Now, these 3 air O-rings, they want to distort out because they're being pressurized the rest of the way around this open spot. They want to distort out a little bit. There's a really sharp edge right there, and if you don't watch it, you'll cut an O-ring. So what I do, I actually use fingernail pressure, push the O-ring in, and slide it past. And you've got to do that 3 times. It gets harder to push as you go. You want to make sure that you're still lined up for your screws, and they'll eventually get down here. There's a couple little cutouts, give you clearance for the front breech assembly screws to go in. Basically that's it. Of course you need to lube the O-rings up. I smear on just a little bit of diver's grease or silicone grease on them, and you need to do that on the front plug too. I'm not going to show you me putting it back together. It's pretty much just reverse of taking it apart. That's pretty much it, guys. I can't think of anything else. Okay, if the first time you try to repressurize the gun, if it won't repressurize, you hear air leaking, it could be because the hammer is actually pushing on the end of the air valve there. So if you cock the gun, the hammer will be away from it, and that allows the air valve to seal all the way, and you can go ahead and pressurize it. That is pretty much it. I would recommend, though, if you use the way Ted removes the air from his Edgun, if you use a broomstick pushing on the hammer, before you take the screws out, I would recommend that you take a screwdriver blade. I use the back of my pocket knife and push that valve in a couple times more. It's got a heavy spring behind it, takes a little pressure to do that. You really want to make sure that you've got all of the air out of the air tube. Even 15-20 psi, you go to take this front tube out or the front block out, that thing could take off. It could hurt you, and you don't want to be hurt. Okay, guys, I guess that's pretty much it. Enjoy, and if you need to adjust your regulator down, I hope this helps you.